Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at a genuinely incredible text from Swami Sivananda ParamaHamsa, specifically diving into chapter 18 of the Siddha Vedam. And I have to tell you, what we're about to uncover is an absolute game changer. It's a radical reinterpretation of a system that has defined millions of lives for centuries. The text takes something that we've always thought of as incredibly external and physical and turns it entirely inward.
It's a pretty provocative question, isn't it? Seriously, just think about it for a second. What if one of history's most rigid, defining social structures was never actually meant to be a social structure at all? The Siddha Vedam argues that our entire concept of this ancient hierarchy has been fundamentally misunderstood from day one. So let's dive into exactly how the text breaks down this massive illusion.
Now, traditionally, society defines the four Hindu castes by some very specific physical things. We're talking birth lineage, physical markers like wearing a sacred thread, and worldly professions, right? The priest, the warrior, the merchant, and the servant. But the teacher in the Siddha Vedam pushes back on this immediately. He points out that, well, plenty of other tradesmen wear sacred threads without ever being considered Brahmins. And if you just hand an outcast a thread, society isn't going to suddenly accept them. The external markers just completely fall apart under any real scrutiny.
To really break down the disciples' rigid, worldly view, the teacher uses a brilliant kind of Socratic method. He asks a beautifully simple question. When you were sleeping, did you have this world and the four distinctions of caste? And, naturally, the disciple answers, no. Why would you? Because in deep sleep, your mind is totally withdrawn. There's no conception of the outside world, no society, and absolutely zero concept of caste. The teacher then hits him with a follow-up. Well, when did you begin to have all these? The answer? Only when waking up. And where do these notions come from the second you wake up? They come directly from the mind.
So this is the absolute crucial turning point. Caste is a mental determination. If caste completely vanishes when your mind is inactive during sleep, then the concept of caste doesn't actually exist out there in the physical world independently of you. It originates entirely from your own mind. There literally are no separate four castes or physical varnas in reality. What we've been perceiving as these rigid, inescapable social classes, they are actually just projections of our own internal states.
So that begs the question, if castes aren't physical groups of people walking around, what are they? Well, the Siddha Vedam maps them out as four distinct psychological states. It's like a blueprint of our consciousness. When our life energy spreads out as the mind, the ego divides it into four different aspects. The mind itself is the Brahman, the Chitham is the Kshatriya, the intellect is the Vaishya, and the ego itself is the Sudra. Let's actually walk through how this incredible internal ecosystem works, starting with the Brahman.
Okay, so in the traditional physical world, the Brahmin is the priest, the master of the Veda, right? But the text redefines the word Veda as simply meaning knowledge. And what is the ultimate master of knowledge? It's the mind. If you don't have a mind, you don't have knowledge. Therefore, the true Brahmin is the mind. But more specifically, the Brahmin is the mind when it's actively seeking Nitya, that eternal truth or everlasting entity, and separating it from the temporary noise of everyday life. So a true Brahmin isn't some guy born into an aristocratic family. It's literally your own mind when it finally succeeds in controlling its fleeting nature and merges with the Supreme Self.
Next up, we have the Kshatriya. Now, traditionally, you think of the warrior class, armed with weapons, riding into battle, glorified for killing bad men and protecting the innocent. But the Siddha Vedam argues something totally different. It says that people who arm themselves with deadly weapons to kill human beings mercilessly aren't true Kshatriyas at all. The true Kshatriya is the Chitham, the real vital glow of life within us, and its battlefield, it's entirely internal. The bad men it's fighting are actually our own negative passions, things like covetousness and hatred, that block the mind from finding true knowledge. The good that needs protecting is the pure mind itself. So the mental Kshatriya is constantly fighting off and cutting down these dark passions to give your mind perfect peace.
The text then radically transforms the Vaishya, the merchant class. In the physical world, they're out there managing the economy and protecting cows, which are known as go-rakshakas. But internally, the true Vaishya is the buddhi, our intellect. In this internal economy, the word go actually translates to sound or word. So the intellect protects our inner sound. It acts as an energy manager, carefully conserving our life energy so we don't just waste it on useless, unnecessary words. It essentially feeds and preserves the mind so it never starves.
And finally, we reach the Sudra, the servant class. Traditionally, these were seen as menial laborers. But internally, the Sudra represents ahankara, which is the I or the ego.
It's within this ego that we find so many of our different pursuits and subclasses. The text says the duty of the Sudra is to perform padaseva for the Brahmin. Now wait, this doesn't mean washing a priest's feet. Pada means place, and seva means to serve. Since we know the Brahmin is the mind, padaseva means serving the mind at its specific place of focus, which is the bhrumadhya, the space right between your eyebrows. So the truly noble function of the ego is attempting to take the mind and serve it by merging it back into the Supreme Source. That is what true service looks like.
This brings us to a super fascinating pivot in the text. If this entire rigid hierarchy is actually just a map of a healthy, internal psychological ecosystem, well, who are the untouchables? Seriously, if castes are all internal, who does this system define as the true outcasts, the chandalas?
According to Swami Sivananda, ParamaHamsa, true outcasts have absolutely nothing to do with social birth, doing menial labor, or eating certain kinds of food. Instead, chandalas are defined by yielding to destructive, pathological states of the mind. Thieving, cheating, lying, murdering, prostituting, these actions are the true untouchables. These are the toxic pathological states that we are commanded to keep at an absolute distance. It completely strips away the cruel social stigma of birth and replaces it with a strict, universal ethical and psychological standard.
And honestly, this leads to one of the most fiery, passionate assertions in the whole chapter. The text explicitly calls out anyone who boasts of being a so-called Brahmin, who arrogantly claims the high society privileges of studying sacred texts while at the same time ridiculing others and indulging in deplorable activities. The text says that person is not a Brahmin at all. They are, in absolute reality, a chandala, an outcast. And the same goes for the corrupt warrior or the cheating merchant. Your external birth title means absolutely nothing if your internal psychological state is corrupt and harmful. By giving into those passions, you become the exact thing you claim to be superior to.
So what's the big takeaway here? Ultimately, the Siddha Vedam is laying out a psychological roadmap for us. It's a guide to mastering your own consciousness. Step 1 is simply recognizing the grand illusion of external castes. Step 2 is understanding those 4 aspects of your internal mind. Step 3 is utilizing your inner kshatriya to conquer those dark passions while your inner vaisya conserves your energy. And finally, step 4 is allowing the ego to do its noble work and merge the mind back with the Supreme Self.
When you actually manage to navigate this internal ecosystem successfully, the text says you reach something called kaivalya. Kaivalya is true salvation. But, as you can probably guess by now, it's not a salvation you find by strictly adhering to a bunch of social rules in the physical world. It is achieved entirely by walking away from what the text calls our suicidal pursuits of the external world, and instead concentrating all of our life energy deeply within us. It is the ultimate realization of the self, a state where all those worldly illusions of separation and division just completely dissolve. When we realize the self, the teacher says, there is simply nothing else.
We're going to wrap up this explainer with an incredibly profound quote straight from the text. All beings around us are our own making, but on account of our ignorance, we are not able to know that. It leaves you with a pretty massive question to chew on, right? If the rigid, seemingly unshakable structures of society are actually just mental determinations, what else in your world is simply a projection of your own mind? How much of the reality you see every single day is actually just your own making?